Hello, this is Michael Altos. We are starting a discussion on the autonomic nervous system. This is recording part 1. The autonomic nervous system is the part of the nervous system which regulates your cardiac and your smooth muscle and the function of your visceral organs and your glands. It's involved in subconscious functions and reflexes, involuntary processes that go on in the body. And the autonomic nervous system can influence homeostasis of virtually every tissue and organ system using just 3 substances, as we will see momentarily. The autonomic nervous system can be divided into two separate divisions, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic system. The sympathetic system is also called the adrenergic system due to adrenaline or epinephrine being one of the neurotransmitters. And the parasympathetic nervous system is also called the cholinergic system because of its use of acetylcholine. Both the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems are tonically active, which means that they have baseline activity. Therefore, it can increase or decrease. And we see, therefore, there's more than one way to accomplish effects with quite a bit of precision by adjusting the levels of the sympathetic or the parasympathetic system. The autonomic nervous system includes both the central nervous system, which would be the principal site of organization, first in the hypothalamus, the brainstem, and then down to the spinal cord. The vagus nerve is one large cranial nerve that transmits a tremendous amount of sensory input from the organs in the thorax and in the abdominal cavity. And it's involved in regulation of heart rate, blood pressure, the GI system, temperature, hunger, thirst, osmolarity, gland secretions. For example, the baroreceptor reflex goes through the central nervous system. Also, emotional responses like blushing and fainting and anxiety are all mediated through the central nervous system via the cortex and the limbic system. So that's all the central nervous system component of the autonomic nervous system. There's also a peripheral autonomic nervous system, and this involves efferent or motor components of the system. Now, this isn't necessarily motor like skeletal muscles, but, for example, smooth muscles, and also the function at other glands and organs. The autonomic system in the periphery is usually made up of a 2-neuron unit. The first neuron originates in the central nervous system, and it terminates in a ganglion. And this is usually a myelinated neuron. The second neuron originates in the ganglion, and it terminates in the target organ, and this neuron is usually unmyelinated. And just by means of comparison, somatic nerves, or the nerves that control your skeletal muscles voluntarily, are usually a single myelinated axon with its cell body in the spinal cord. We're going to see some diagrams of this and go into more detail shortly. When we talk about the parasympathetic nervous system, again, the cholinergic system, it goes by the mnemonic rest and digest. It's also known as the cranial sacral system because the nerves originate in the cranial and sacral nerves. The vagus nerve, which is cranial nerve 10, accounts for more than 3/4 of all parasympathetic nerve fibers. As we said, the preganglionic neurons originate either in the brainstem, cranial, or in the sacral segments of the spinal cord. The ganglia in the peripheral nervous system of the cholinergic system are either in or near the target organ. They're far away from the spinal cord. The ratio of pre to post-ganglionic fibers is close to 1:1. So parasympathetic effects are pretty discrete. They're localized, and we don't get the same broad, dispersed effect that we can see with sympathetic effects. There's no such thing as a parasympathetic mass discharge, as we'll see there is with the sympathetic system. The final neurotransmitter in the parasympathetic system is acetylcholine. And acetylcholine is then removed from the area of the receptor by acetylcholinesterase, similar to what we have seen in the neuromuscular junction. Here are some diagrams, and especially this diagram on the right is very important. You should be extremely familiar with it. Right now, let's just see the parasympathetic system. So here we see the preganglionic fiber originating in the brainstem. It could also originate down in the sacral spinal cord. It leaves the central nervous system and goes to a ganglion which is far from the spinal cord and close to the target organ. In that ganglion is where the first nerve synapses with the second postganglionic nerve. The neurotransmitter for that synapse will be acetylcholine, and we'll see it's acetylcholine for all ganglia. And specifically, it's the nicotinic type receptor, as we'll see shortly. The postganglionic fiber is short, and when it gets to the target organ, acetylcholine is once again the neurotransmitter. This diagram over here shows the same thing. In blue, we can see our parasympathetic system originating from the brainstem or from the sacral spinal cord, with ganglia either in or very close to the target organs. So that was the parasympathetic system. The sympathetic nervous system, the adrenergic system, goes by the mnemonic fight or flight. It's also called the thoracolumbar system because its preganglionic fibers originate in the spinal cord, usually in the thoracic or lumbar nerve roots. These fibers are short, and they go to sympathetic ganglia, which are usually relatively close to the spinal cord. There is a chain of paravertebral sympathetic ganglia. It's a paired chain, so there's a chain on each side of the spinal cord. And then preganglionic fibers, once they get to these ganglia, can then synapse with postganglionic neurons at the same level, or they can course up or down the ganglionic chain and synapse at another level. Just looking back for a moment at this diagram, this is the spinal cord, and this over here is the ganglionic chain. So we can have fibers coming into the ganglia and then synapsing to a postganglionic fiber, or going up and down the chain and synapsing with a different levels postganglionic fiber. There are other specialized ganglia, for example, the celiac plexus, the mesenteric plexus, and special paired ganglia like the superior cervical ganglion, the middle cervical ganglion, the stellate ganglion, all places, once again, where sympathetic nerves will meet up with postganglionic fibers and various connections can be made. Once again, sympathetic ganglia are closer to the spinal cord than they are to the target organ. And the one exception that you should know about are the preganglionic fibers that go directly to the adrenal gland. So the adrenal gland receives a preganglionic fiber. You can sort of think of the adrenal gland as being a ganglion of sorts, but it doesn't have a postganglionic fiber. Instead, it has adrenal chromaffin cells which release epinephrine and norepinephrine instead of sending signals down a postganglionic fiber. So when the adrenal gland gets stimulated, it releases epinephrine and norepinephrine into the circulation. Here's our diagram again. So now we can talk about different sympathetic fibers. Here we can see three different sympathetic fibers. They are all short preganglionic fibers. They all go to a ganglion that is near the spinal cord. They all have acetylcholine binding to a nicotinic receptor in the ganglion. They all have long postganglionic second fibers, which go to the target organ. And the only difference between these three is that the vast majority of them use norepinephrine as the neurotransmitter. Some of them, very few, use acetylcholine, and a few of them use dopamine. The acetylcholine in the sympathetic system is mostly limited to sweat glands, and in the dopamine it's mostly renal vessels. Finally, we see our exception, the adrenal gland. Here's the preganglionic fiber going to the adrenal gland. Acetylcholine binds to a nicotinic fiber, or the nicotinic receptor, but that receptor actually goes straight to cells that secrete epinephrine and norepinephrine into the blood. On the left side, we can see our sympathetic ganglionic chain and other sympathetic ganglia. We can see, in general, our short preganglionic fibers and our long postganglionic fibers, and the whole system originates from the thoracolumbar region of the spinal cord. We said that the postganglionic fibers, which originate in the sympathetic ganglion, go to the effector tissues. That's where they terminate. They can travel within spinal nerves. And interestingly, the postganglionic fibers outnumber the preganglionic fibers by about 20 or 30 to 1. So one preganglionic fiber can cause a tremendous amount of sympathetic signal to the entire body. Many organs can be stimulated at once, and we call this a mass sympathetic discharge. This is the shock feeling that you get when you're scared or threatened. The primary neurotransmitter in the sympathetic nervous system is norepinephrine. That's very important for you to know. We know there are some exceptions, like sweat glands, which work by acetylcholine. The adrenal medulla releases norepinephrine and epinephrine. But if I had to ask you what is the one main neurotransmitter in the sympathetic system, it is certainly norepinephrine. I think we've covered all of these details now, and you can see it all summarized in these charts, and especially this chart on the right. I would expect you to be able to basically create this from memory, because all of the information you need to know about the sympathetic system is contained in this chart on the right. Specifically, the catecholamines are epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine. They all have sympathetic activity. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter in the central nervous system. Norepinephrine is synthesized and stored in these postganglionic neurons and in the adrenal medulla, and epinephrine is synthesized and stored mostly in the adrenal medulla. You should be aware that all of these catecholamines are synthesized by the body, starting with phenylalanine, the amino acid, which is then converted to tyrosine, which is converted to dopa, which is converted to dopamine, which is converted to norepinephrine, which is converted to epinephrine. And the conversion of tyrosine to dopa is catalyzed by an enzyme called tyrosine hydroxylase. This is the rate-limiting step. And in fact, when we have lots of norepinephrine in the system, the presence of norepinephrine causes negative feedback at this enzyme and turns down the synthesis of additional catecholamines. What happens to these catecholamines after they have their effect? Well, pretty much at the nerve terminal, all of the endogenous norepinephrine is taken back up. It undergoes reuptake into the presynaptic terminal. And in fact, we have drugs like tricyclic antidepressants or cocaine, which inhibit this reuptake. And so patients will have high plasma levels of norepinephrine. Any norepinephrine that is in the plasma will eventually be metabolized by an enzyme called monoamine oxidase. And we'll see that again later on in the year when we talk about some psychiatric medications. Again, circulating catecholamines, so like the ones secreted by the adrenal gland, will go to the liver and then the kidneys for metabolism. They are metabolized first by an enzyme called COMT into a bunch of metabolites, one of which is called vanillomandylic acid, VMA. And this is significant because this is used in the diagnosis of pheochromocytoma. You can look at urine levels of VMA, and when they are elevated, that tells us that there's a lot of catecholamine circulating and being metabolized. Catecholamines in the plasma last for a lot longer than catecholamines at the terminal, at the presynaptic, postsynaptic terminal. Catecholamines that are secreted by the adrenal gland last for minutes. Catecholamines that are working right at the nerve terminal last for milliseconds. And systemic catecholamines do not cross the blood-brain barrier. One term that we should highlight is the word sympathomimetics. These are drugs that act like catecholamines, but they have a different structure. So they aren't catecholamines, but they have the actions of catecholamines. This chart summarizes some of the differences that we've highlighted between the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems, where they originate, thoracolumbar versus cranial sacral, the nature of their ganglia, paravertebral ganglion chains versus terminal ganglia near the target tissue, the nature of their fibers, short preganglionic cholinergic fibers and long adrenergic postganglionic fibers versus the opposite, long cholinergic preganglionic fibers and short cholinergic postganglionic fibers. The ratio of pre to postganglionic fibers, 1 to 20 in the sympathetic and 1 to 3 in the parasympathetic. the ability to have a systemic mass discharge in the sympathetic system compared with limited discrete activity in the parasympathetic system, the main neurotransmitter being norepinephrine versus acetylcholine, and again the mnemonic of fight or flight versus rest and digest. So that's our introduction to the autonomic nervous system. Please study this information very carefully because we will be relying on it for the rest of the year and certainly for the upcoming discussions. Please let me know if you have any questions.